If I could have everybody's attention here in the media center, we are now joined by Kyle Busch, driver of the number 18 M&M 75th anniversary Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing, fresh off of his win in Indianapolis, where a lot of celebrating there, kissing the bricks. How's that taking that kind of momentum into Pocono?
It certainly is the best way to come to Pocono, being able to race the way we did last week at a flat 2.5-mile racetrack, really similar to Pocono. But yet still way different. So, the challenges that we faced last week are entirely different than the challenges we'll face this week. So, all in all, just really excited about being able to score our second Brickyard 400 victory 2 years in a row. That was pretty special as well, and being able to back up our performance from last year. So, looking forward to some great things the rest of the year, hopefully, and being able to knock Pocono off the list. That's the next thing that's holding us back here this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. We're going to start here on the right with Claire and work our way around. Thank you.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. A lot of the drivers in here have been talking about the restarts, and you're so good at restarts. I would put you in the higher category in that area. So I wonder, trying to knock this one off, if you think that will be a big part of it, and what else you think maybe that you had been missing that you hadn't won here yet? Yeah,
restarts are huge here for sure. Just, having the restarts with the long straightaway here, getting down into turn one, you can fan out pretty wide, and having the opportunity to stay single file obviously allows you to go down a straightaway faster. But when everybody fans out, it definitely manipulates the runs of the different grooves, the different lanes. So it's a bigger challenge here than maybe some other racetracks. But you file down into about 2 lanes if you're lucky through turn one. But more times than not, you'd like to be single file through there. So it's tricky here for sure with the restarts, and they play a big role to what this race ends up being.
Do you know what you haven't had that has kept you back from winning?
There's been a lot of things, I guess, over the years that have kept us from winning here. Restarts, I would say, is probably one of those. Fuel mileage last year, we were leading coming to the white, or took the white flag leading and ran out. So, there's just variables that have eliminated our opportunity from winning here, and we just got to put it all together. It's no different than any other week. You got to have everything fall into place and the stars align, and it just hasn't quite happened here yet.
Okay, go next to Bob, and then into the back to Pat.
Bob Pockris, ESPN. NASCAR announced this week that there'll be some changes to the floorboard and footbox areas to the cars for plate races next year, and then all races 2018. Are you familiar with what the new rules are? Do you agree kind of with what the direction NASCAR is going? And is there any chance of teams actually implementing these when they're not mandatory, or does the weight shift from the new materials or new thickness kind of prohibit you from doing it when it's not mandatory?
Yeah, so I'm about 90% sure of all the changes that are coming, and I'm for it, of course. Anything that's safety driven and that's going to help the driver's cockpit area stay intact in a crash. Obviously, there's some debate as to whether or not stiffening up the cars, make them too stiff when we crash, and you don't have the opportunity to absorb the crash itself through the car. Like Indy cars, we would all say that those cars absorb the crash, obviously, but I feel like with our advancements in the safer barriers that we're trying to make sure that the walls absorb our crashes and the cars stay intact for the drivers, so we don't have injuries like we saw with myself or could potentially have seen with Austin Dillon's crash. So, I think it's a positive thing. I certainly think it's good for our cars, for our drivers, to keep us safe. I feel as though that these changes, I doubt you'll see teams implementing them into their cars too early before they're mandatory. It just doesn't make sense to us. Obviously, we're all competitors, and we're going to build cars to the capabilities that we know how to make them as fast and as light and as low and everything as possible. So if they would implement a rule where you make all these changes and you're able to run your car 25 pounds light, then we would all do it right away, But adding weight to the cars and then being able to take that weight back out is going to be a challenge for some of these teams. So it's going to be a bit tricky.
Okay, we're going to go to Pat and then to Joseph here.
Pat DeCola, NASCAR.com. What are your thoughts on how the 17 rules package from an aero standpoint is starting to shape up? And do you feel like that benefits your driving style at all?
I guess the quote-unquote 2017 package is what we've run at Michigan, Charlotte All-Star Race, Kentucky. So, I'm for it. I think it's a positive. I feel as though the last couple years we moved in a direction where we were adding downforce to the cars, and I would say that it wasn't necessarily putting on a better show. The cars were, let's, for a lack of a better term, call it too easy to drive, and you know, it was too hard to pass. So now you're taking downforce away, and I feel like you're giving more opportunity to the drivers, the good drivers, to showcase their talent and put themselves farther towards the front of the field, and not get trapped in or stuck behind other cars or drivers that aren't quite as good or as capable of being able to run towards the front. So it does create passing, given the opportunities, and does levy itself more towards what the drivers have been asking for.
Joseph Walken, frontstretch.com. You now have 66 wins across all 3 divisions in your career. What do you feel like your legacy is at this point in your career?
I'm not worried about that. It's not over yet. I got a long ways to go. So hopefully it's one that would be hard to beat, and that you know, it's one that will be remembered. So we'll just keep fighting for more wins. We're not done yet.
Go to a gentleman here on the right of the camera.
Ross Lippman, ABC 27 News. Perhaps compounding for the challenges for you this weekend is having Jeff Gordon back in the field. No one's been more successful at this track than him. Have you noticed a difference in sort of the atmosphere surrounding him being back, given the circumstances, as he replaces Dale?
I would say within the media and maybe some fans having more opportunity to see Jeff Gordon again, you know, that's kind of the difference. But as far as you know, drivers or on the racetrack or people within the garage area, the team members, the guys that work each and every weekend, I haven't seen much difference. You know, obviously it's pretty cool that he has the opportunity to come out of retirement. I know he never used the R word, that he was retiring, but that's why I kind of find it a little funny that he's back again racing. But it's neat to have him here, of course, and you know, hoping that they have a good solid run. I mean, last week I felt like I never saw him on the racetrack, so obviously he did a pretty good job. I never had an opportunity to I led the most laps, so I never have an opportunity to get back in traffic to race with him at all. So we'll see what happens here this weekend.
Go next to Brant, and then to Scott, and then to Jerry.
Brant James, USA Today Sports. Kevin Harvick is without his regular crew chief this weekend. You were in that situation at Dover. What are the biggest obstacles to having a normal competitive weekend in that situation?
I think the biggest obstacles is just the communication with the crew chief. You know, when we're either at the car or we go to the hauler and we talk and have our discussions about how the car's handling, he can read it in my face, he could see it in my eyes, you know, and he can understand my tone and being able to figure out exactly how loose I am or how tight I am or what I'm talking about within the car. And he has the opportunity to see it visually go around the racetrack, and also to be within the team and be there within the guys and having the opportunity to work with them with the computer simulations and stuff like that right off firsthand. So I feel like that's all the biggest thing that you kind of miss out on when you don't have your crew chief here on the weekend.
Scott, and then we'll wrap up here with Jerry.
Scott Walsh from the Scranton Times-Tribune. Kyle, can you talk a little bit about the digital dashboards? You use them in the Cup Series, but you don't have them when you run an Xfinity or the trucks. Can you just kind of compare and contrast? Do you have a preference, one over the other, benefits, distractions, that kind of thing?
I think that the digital dash is good. I feel as though, you know, I get all the same information just in a cleaner way through the digital dash. You know, the other way of all the different gauges, obviously, you know, you got to read a needle and stuff like that. So with the digital dash, it just, other guys have it formulated where they still have the needle, but I just have it where it's written out. Boom, done. You know, tell me a number. I don't want to find where it's at. So it's just driver preference, just different things. I mean, I've seen a lot of different gauges or dash layouts, the digital dash layouts, and how people want it and what they see on it. I've heard other drivers use multiple pages of the dash, some for pit road and some for you know, more information about volts and fuel pressures and stuff like that. So mine's pretty neat and tidy and clean. I don't need too much information.
Jerry Jordan, Performance Racing Network, and Kicking the Tires. I didn't get to talk to you at Watkins Glen. You were doing double duty in the TRD car and your car. Can you talk about what you may have learned from both of those that you can bring over for next weekend?
Yeah, I mean, the TRD car was just the the wheel force car, so it's already at a disadvantage with all the weight on that thing. You know, it's overweight from what our race cars are, and the guys over there with TRD and their test team do a really good job of you know, having the resources that we do to be able to go out there and run some runs that we get to run. You know, you're only able to make 1, maybe 2 laps at most because everything just gets so hot in those cars because you're producing too much heat through the wheel force transducers and whatnot. That might be a big word, I'm not sure. But it's, you know, they're set up the same. They've got all the same components and everything. So you're just out there just trying to simulate a lap as best as you can. And even in that car too, you know, you're not allowed to hit the curbs. So like through the bus stop, you really got to be ginger through the bus stop and not bounce off all the curbs as you would normally with your race car, just because it'll just send all the sensors crazy. So, you know, it's a neat piece to get to drive and have an opportunity to learn from, but it's not for me to stare at a computer screen and figure it all out. Those guys do a good job at that.
With your car, did you pick up something that you can't carry over?
With our car, with our normal car, yeah, I mean, for sure. We learned a lot of things, I feel like, last week at the Watkins Glen test. We learned that the track isn't quite as fast as we had expected it to be. It's probably tire limited. You know, you get a chance to slide around a little bit still. It seems like the slip of the cars is still the same as what it was last year. But speeds, we'll see if they increase more when we get back there with getting more rubber down on the racetrack, having more cars, more series there, and seeing what all that lays out for all of us for the weekend.
Kyle, really
Okay.
appreciate you stopping by, and
Yep.
good luck this weekend.
Thanks.